is well. All is well. The divine source of the universe guides my life and all my resources. All is well. All is well. The divine. Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for week number 5 of Patiently Waiting for Nothing podcast. I am so excited to be able to share space and time with you and to just really have all of us come to a really great energy, right? Where we can just be in a moment of time. And of course, that's our conversation tonight, where there's peace and love and protection. You know, that's what my intention is for creating this series. And most of you already know that Patiently Waiting for Nothing is a book that was written by me, Rita Stewart, aka Shemsu-t, about 20 years ago. And we're actually celebrating that 20-year anniversary by producing this podcast. And every week we have one of the most incredible Master Force coaches to come on and share with us their thoughts, not just about the book, but about the themes in the book and how they actually utilize that information in their lives, in their clients' lives, and in just their own path for spiritual awareness. So once again, I just want to thank you for that. Every week I try to give you another aspect of the book just so you can know how it was laid out. And this week I wanted to share with you that in each chapter we also include further reading. You know, it's like, yeah, you might want more information about whatever we discussed in this chapter. So this week's book that we're suggesting is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Now, 20 years ago, you know, so many wonderful books have been written since then, but 20 years ago, this was my joint. You know, I was in corporate America, I was married with children, and I really needed to know how to effectively use my time. And I was actually doing workshops and seminars with families and especially business women, assisting them in being effective in their life. So I still think this is a classic. So it's probably out there on Audible. It's probably on YouTube, probably on Kindle. But again, it's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And you can also find Patiently Waiting for Nothing on Amazon Kindle. And you can get that either in the printed version. I think they have maybe 3 or 4 copies left. And then also you can get it in the ebook. Okay. So now, tonight, we're going to be talking about time in the power of now. And we're going to be speaking with one of my most amazing confidants and the most gifted, intuitive astrologer I have run across, who has provided so much insight and information in my own life. So without further ado, Timothy Glenn, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm grateful today. Doing very well.
You're doing very well. You sound great.
Thank you.
So, Timothy, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you, where you are. You can even talk about how we met and some of that, just to catch people up on our relationship, and then also how we move in the world.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me this platform and this opportunity to address your listeners on today. I'm so grateful for that, Moo. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure I speak on that on behalf of my lovely wife as well.
Yes.
Just to get into this, I have to keep certain notes in front of me because I will just go on and on and on. And, so I have to be disciplined here. I understand time is limited. But, this thing for me, my path actually started right at 16 years
Mm-hmm.
old.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember, I'm from the South. So I was raised to be, um, in some type of leadership position within the church dynamic. I can remember at age 9 when all the other kids were in their Sunday school and they would get, if they got done early, they get snacks, they could go out to play, they could do a lot of things. But at 9 years old, I am the superintendent of our Sunday school.
Oh, wow.
uh,
Titles.
Listening to the minutes from my secretary, in front of adults,
Right, right.
that's just me, and I'm grateful for that. At that time, I was quite resentful, but, now that I think about it, I think they saw something in me that I didn't quite see in myself.
Of course.
And they didn't see the extent of where I am today. I'm sure most would not approve of some of the things I flow with today. But nevertheless, one thing about grace and the idea of grace, it gives you assistance in different ways as time goes on. It's funny that we're talking about time, and it really took me back to just thinking about how I got here, right? So at 16, the path really began for me. I was introduced to subliminal music and subliminal affirmations from my psychology teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me pendulums. He taught me a lot of things that he didn't really introduce to the public in the classroom. And I'm so grateful for that. He has passed on, and I have a picture of him on my altar, because I always want to remember him, because he was considered to be the weirdo of all the teachers in the school, right? Because his ways were just different. His ways of learning or teaching, rather, was so different, because most classrooms you go into, you hear a lecture or you watch some type of video, and then you have this paperwork, and then you go through testing. With him, he was quite different. He literally, when we went to his classroom, we would read for a little bit, then we were required to close those books, and then listen to his subliminal music while we napped. Really, literally, this is how class went.
Wow.
Of course, that was fought against, and again, he was labeled as weird. But at that moment, that began to change my life. I never, in high school, used an alarm clock. Yeah. I didn't need one, because he taught me how to affirm the time I should wake up.
Yes.
He taught me how to use subliminal music to direct my affairs to where I'm not so dependent on outside sources to know what time it is, shall I say. Right. And so I'm grateful for that. And from that began different readings, different studies. I remember Ernest Holmes being introduced to that at a young age, and the science of mind. And, that went on, but nevertheless, I wasn't quite ready. The time wasn't prepared for me to leave that dynamic. So I stayed within that structure, became a minister, licensed and ordained in the Baptist Church. Don't regret a minute of that. Right. So much valuable leadership qualities that I still take with me to this day. And, from that, man, I went through a divorce in my first marriage. Mm-hmm. A huge piece of that divorce was basically about what was in my library. Again, I can remember having, the Metu Natir in there, right. All the volumes that were available. Again, right. The science of mind. Golly, I can't think of the brother's name here, but it was so many writings that were in my library that was in conflict with my spiritual tribe at that time. So, I went through a pretty tough divorce there. And I said I wasn't going to go back to church. I said, I'm just going to pick up the path I was on. But this brother was so adamant about getting me to at least visit his church, right? I mean, for months and months. And I said, you know what, just so you will leave me the hell alone, okay? and keep in mind, as a preacher, I use language that could get your attention, okay? It was clear that I wasn't meant for that environment for an extended amount of time, right? So I went to that church, and let me just show you, how time really works when it's your appointment, okay? I went to that church on a Saturday to visit. By that Sunday, I was in a leadership position in that church, teaching their school of ministry.
What?
Okay? In just one day. That church has been established for a number of years with several people in there, several people who were probably waiting for that position. But that pastor saw something in me that, really put me on the path that I'm on now. So I began to teach their school of ministry. And that is so important because at that point in time is where I met my lovely wife at that church.
Okay.
Yeah, so by the time I was divorced, so I met my wife there. Her name is Jaquay Glenn, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of her in my life and just having the confidence to even do what I do today. It is largely because of her.
Wow.
And anyway, I met her there, and by the time I began to convince her of some things, to make a long story short, when I began to teach that, it really caused some issues within the church we were at. So we went to another church hoping that it was more progressive. It turned out not to be. So basically, we got kicked out of two churches.
And how long? Like within a year or something?
Oh, yeah. I think it was with a year, if not a year, definitely two. It was happening pretty quick pace. And at that time, we did meet another powerful, what we call an apostle, okay? And an apostle is a very unique energy in the church because they have the gift to build structures, to create platforms and dynamics within the church. And, so they're all about building. And, we were able to connect with him. And to make a long story short, that we weren't kicked out of that church. I just kindly stated why we needed to leave. And then from that point, me and Jaquay, we were still not necessarily married, but we were so close together, people thought we were.
Okay.
And the day before we got married, which the day we got married was July the 20th, we started this work that we're doing to this day on July the 21st. Wow. So we made two agreements in that day. One to get married, and the next to start the work after we married. And we've been doing it ever since. And you're
talking about the Leadership Institute.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So Leadership Institute for Transformation and Empowerment, better known as LIGHT, was a gathering structure of people of like minds who were very progressive in the way that they thought. And we joined together. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about time today. So, and people have to understand that the people who join with you may not necessarily be the people who stay with you. Okay? Right. There are people who grow together and there are people who grow apart. Time is the gift that really puts all that together. And I say this all the time, if you're building a beautiful structure, a new building, you have scaffolding all around that building. But when the building is complete, nobody leaves the scaffolding up. It's time to remove that. It's so that people can appreciate the beauty of the architecture of that building. And so, to make a long story short, we started this with several people around us. You've met plenty of them.
Yes.
And as we begin to grow, that began to put pressure on their cherished beliefs, and they had to make a decision to keep growing or to stick with what they know.
Yeah.
Many people out of fear, began to go back to what was familiar versus what was in front of us to trailblaze and to create something new.
Right.
So again, all of that being said, here we are today, me and my wife together, really doing this work, especially on issues of the shadow, especially issues of the ego, healing the mind, healing the body. And, we're just, all in at this moment, And the funny thing, I told you I'm going to keep going. And
I love it because, it's just so interesting because I could listen to your stories, 1,000 times and hear something in them.
Oh yeah.
And I do know. So when you're talking, I'm imagining the people that I know who's in your
Mm-hmm.
tribe, and then at the
Mm-hmm.
same time looking at how we've expanded both of our tribes through each
Mm-hmm.
other.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to be talking about time because that leads me to the next chapter of exactly where I am now. Because keep in mind, I come from the church. In the church, I literally in the pulpit preached against a lot of the modalities that I practice today. Astrology being definitely one of them.
Yes.
And so there's a friend of ours, and I think you've met Heather.
Oh
Heather
yeah,
is a
I know
beautiful,
Heather.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Heather's a beautiful soul. And every time she lives in Memphis, I live in Jackson, Tennessee. It's
Mm-hmm.
about 50 minutes, maybe an hour of separation. But whenever she would come down, she would always bring gifts. Okay, and the gifts that she always would bring me were astrology books, and I would take those books and just kind of scoff at them and just throw them in the closet. I didn't take it seriously. Okay, I didn't want to offend Heather because she has a beautiful heart,
Yes.
and but I would always get these books. Okay, so my wife would always tell me this is why she is so important in what I'm doing now. That one day I think that you would be excellent with working with astrology. I don't know if I ever asked her why she thought that to this day, but that was, she's very intuitive.
Yes.
So I trust most things she say. I said most.
Yes. I know your wife. I know that you can trust most things.
But that wasn't one of them, doing the astrology thing,
Yeah.
right? So here's what happened. And I have this, if I pull my journal out, I still have that journal entry. Here's how I got into this. One morning, I had a vision. And that vision was the sun was out at noonday. How I knew it was noon, I don't know. I just know it was noon. And when I'm appreciating the sun, I was able to gaze at it. It wasn't so bright that it was hurting my eyes, but I was able to gaze at that. And the more I gazed at that sun, I noticed stars began to appear around that sun. Mm. And when I saw that and began, if it's a vision or if it's a dream, the moment it becomes lucid is when you recognize something that should not be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the point of entry in a lucid dream. And at that time, I know good and well, I didn't know a whole lot about astrology then, but I knew that the stars shouldn't be out at noon.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And
you shouldn't be able to see them either.
Well, absolutely. The only time I've ever witnessed that was when we had a total eclipse in Nashville, Tennessee, and I did a live on that. And pretty much the city went pitch dark. And even then, you were only able to see the more luminant ones, Venus, things of that nature. So, yeah. But at that moment, when I began to question, why is this happening? A strong wind came and literally knocked me off my feet in the vision and literally knocked me off the bed. I was barely hanging on the bed, which is so crazy to me. And I could remember, as I was holding on to these pillars, it seemed like it was two pillars I was holding on to. And I'm still, kind of decoding that dream to this day. Every little step I go gives me explanation of what really happened in that vision. And I could hear, as I was holding on to those pillars, I could hear the sound of Om go across the universe. Okay. And it seemed to be coming from the west. Okay, because I understand that that's where the sun was. It seemed like it was going. So I had to use that as, to understand exactly what was happening. But
as an indicator, yes.
Yeah, and I could hear Om. And when I woke up from that, I had a kind of a cold sweat. And then the first thought I had was, I need to get these astrology books out. That's what I remember saying that. But to my surprise, when I got those books out, every planet that is listed in the basic astrology structure, which is, and the sun and moon are considered planets in astrology, but everything from the sun to Pluto, I knew their characteristics without even studying anything about astrology. Okay. And that was after that vision. So those books really enhanced the deposit that was made at that moment. So at that moment, I began to, I'm telling you, my wife probably can bear witness to this, 18 hours a day, I was in
Wow.
those astrology books.
Wow.
Didn't do anything else. I don't remember doing any sessions. My wife pretty much picked up the sessions, picked up any classes that were taught. She, did all of that. When I woke up, my head was in an astrology book. When I went to bed, I slept with those books. And that went on probably for 6 months. After that, I began to practice that on my friends, on the family, using them as my guinea pigs. And it was awkward because I preached against this. So I'm already having a little cognitive dissonance issues
Right.
between, embracing this new way of flowing. But, then my wife put me out there again, pushing me as she always does, and say, you know what? I think you could do this as a profession. I was like, oh my God. No, you just, I just got over just embracing this. Now you want me to talk about, putting this out there as a career. And so I said, I'm always asking for a sign. Okay. I'm just that type of person. I never move without some type of synchronistic confirmation. I just don't make moves like that.
Yes.
I said, okay, so if this, and when I speak to the universe, I'm speaking of God. When I speak of life, I'm speaking of God, whatever, people subscribe to. But I said, okay, universe, if this is what it is, I need a sign. And when that happened, there's a sister from Chicago, a good friend of mine. I won't mention her name at this moment. I don't want to embarrass her. But I said, you know what? Because I saw her post some astrology stuff. I said, you know what? I'm just learning the ropes here. Let me give you a reading. Didn't charge her nothing. It's just free. I just wanted to do it for free.
Right.
I didn't feel competent enough to request funds for the work I did. But anyway, I did that reading. It wasn't in person. She gave me her birthday. I just gave her a written explanation in the Facebook inbox. She was pretty much floored at the explanations I was giving her and the time that it was happening. Remember, we're talking about time.
That's right.
Okay. So after that, she was the first person to compensate me for my work. And I didn't ask for a dime. She just said, yo, where's your PayPal? I'm going to send this to you.
Exactly.
At that moment, that was my sign. And to make a long story short, or keep a long story longer, I've been doing that ever since. So
that is beautiful.
That's where I am today.
That is wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. And then actually, I always want to emphasize this in our meeting because you and I met on Facebook.
Absolutely. Very true. So true.
I have found most of my tribe on Facebook, contrary to how people think.
Absolutely.
And,
definitely.
And since that time have, visited you guys and just, listen, we're family.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Definitely.
Forever. That is really great. That is awesome. So now I just want to relate a little bit to the book because you had a chance to read it years ago. What was your take on the book and then in its relationship to time and in the concept that you're expanding into? Not so much the world concept, but...
So, here's the thing, reading this book, and, of course, everything that I look at, I somehow just relate it back to astrology. And, when you wrote this book, it wasn't for then, clearly. Yeah, it was, this book, when I read the book then, I said, you know what? This is going to be hard for people to grasp. And it's not a difficult read at all. It's one of the most simple yet profound writings that I have in my Kindle. Okay. Like I told you, I kept that book when I first got on it, but it wasn't written for then. It was definitely written for now. And, you went through, in some phases, you're still in the remnants of that second Saturn return. And our second Saturn return is usually when we reap the rewards for work that was done before its time. Okay? And the first Saturn return is when we prepare for that work. So the first Saturn return is pretty much an adventure. It's pretty kick-ass. A lot of my clients, they first reach out to me between the ages of 28 and 31. That's because of all of that first Saturn return influence.
Right.
But the second level of my clients who really have the most inquiry are those who are preparing for that second Saturn return. And in that second Saturn return is when they enjoy all the fruits of their labor. Okay. And that's where you are with that. And for me, this book, especially as it relates to time, this book was not written for then. It was written for now. There will be many more works that you do that are not for now. It will be meant for then.
Wow.
But this is probably one of the beautiful yet frustrating things for you, okay? Because it seems like our work is not ever appreciated when it's done in the moment.
Yes.
It's in time that things begin to unfold. So with this book in the area of time, very dynamic book, very extraordinary book. I don't want to get ahead of the questions here.
No, go ahead, because that's fine. I just wanted to because you always get me. That's what I love about our relationship. Because it's when my spirit actually told me in January to pull this book out and start celebrating the 20 years, I was like, well, wait a minute. I mean, come on. I wanted to work on such and such, but I've learned pretty much like you too. We don't argue with spirit. We flow.
Absolutely.
And that was before this COVID stuff broke out.
Right. Yes.
And
absolutely.
so as I was setting up the structure, we're now moving into that. And I was just filled with excitement and gratitude and appreciation and acknowledgement that I listened. Because I'm like, this is perfect for now.
It is. It really is. And I'm so happy, again, to have this conversation with you concerning this book. And my portion, again, to discuss is the element of time. And the quote, if you don't mind me going there.
Yeah, go ahead to the quote.
The one that stands out, I think I'm reading it correctly. I now surrender to the process of life, and I allow myself to flow in timelessness.
Wow.
So you think about that, and the key word for this is process. Okay? So, if we're having a conversation about time, you can't have time without having a conversation with consciousness or God or the universe or life, right? And I say that because the majority of individuals, and it seems like I'm just pressing repeat on. I just did a podcast not too long ago. I remember going into this. I'm going to go into this again. We understand God, the personality, but we don't understand God, the process. And God, the process, is much more than God, the personality.
Yes.
We have religions because people subscribe to the personality of God.
Yes.
We have spirituality because people subscribe to the process of God. So that's a unique difference between the two. And, if we understand God, the process, then we understand that things happen over time so that God can be revealed in us and through us. But that doesn't happen instantly. That is the gift of time, that in time you can actually transform and become something that you were not yesterday.
Yes.
And no other universe awards us this gift. Okay? Time is what connects the eternal to purpose. And that, doing astrology really teaches me that. Okay? Because astrology allows me to time travel. I can go anywhere I want to in time. Man. If it happened 2,000 years ago, cool, I can go and reap wisdom from that. Or 2,000 years from now, I can look and take a glimpse and see what's coming. So, with that, the process, surrendering to the process, is one of the most blessed and rewarding things an individual can do if they are on the spiritual path. So there's so many takeaways from this book. I'll just let you lead me on that front.
No, that is wonderful to even hear you, because when you brought up process is really attached to spirituality. I can
Right.
see that so amazing because we like to say, trust the process. Inside
Yes.
of trusting the process is where we expand.
Absolutely.
And we
So true.
actually allow ourselves to be grounded in a state of uncertainty, unrest. I mean, and it doesn't bother us because in that moment, time can stand still for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah. So it's also, again, just so interesting. And if we, again, trusting that process is very difficult for many people, especially if they have been used to some type of religious structure to hold their hand every step of the way, or to tell them every step they should make, to punish or reward them for taking certain steps in their life,
Yes.
So even in that type of, even within those constraints of religion, there's a safety there that you can always depend on somebody else to guide you. But when you're going into spirituality, now you are your own authority. Okay.
Wow. Yes.
And you can listen to anybody. There are so many people I listen to for wisdom. Okay. So I'm not my own authority with the wisdom. I'm on the phone with one who I seek wisdom from. So clearly, as well as I do, that anywhere I can extract wisdom, I'm searching for it. But what I'm saying, making a decision in life of what path I should take is my authority.
Yes.
And not just my authority, but my responsibility. Yes. That's why I believe that, even before we come here, I believe, I can't prove it. It's just something that I just know, that we make agreements before we get permission to arrive here. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, we can call those agreements anything that we want. I like to call them sacred contracts. And I believe, in a contract, there's an agreement that we are to have certain experiences, that we are going to have to go through certain things. There will be rewards, there will be challenges, but nevertheless, we agree upon those things for a certain theme in our lifetime. And I think a lot of people get lost in that process, okay, which violates their sacred contracts. With me, doing astrology, it is a way for me to help people not only remember what they have overcome in the past, but also remember their future, because they are all one when you speak of time. We speak a lot of remembering the past, but in astrology, you can actually remember the future. The reason you can do that is because we can go ahead of time and look at the potential of an individual. Okay, and that energy that is coming for them in the future, they can embrace that in the now. Okay, and the present moment and in the now is so powerful, right? Because we're here in this space, and we're forced to look at ourselves and look within. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful place of acceptance, being in the now. Being in the now is very rare, because all of our actions are for either healing or reconciling the past, or preparing for the future.
Yes.
Think about that. Everything that we do, even what we're doing now, we is for someone to come listen to this and be empowered. So even though we're talking about the now, we're not in the now. But being in the now is a very sacred, powerful place that is not so easy to get into. Okay, in the scriptures, there was what's called Bible scriptures. That is what's called a place, the Holy of Holies. It's the place where time stops. Mm-hmm. It's the place that, and only when time stops can you be in unison with the universe or God. Okay, because God doesn't exist in time.
Wow.
But he exists as us in time.
Yes.
Why? Because, if we're born into time, that means that the eternal is connected to purpose. And that purpose relates right back to that sacred contract we made to experience certain things. So there's certain things we go through. We go through traumas. Now, in our right mind, in our ego mind, there is no way that we would sign that contract to experience a rape, a molestation,
Come on.
to be robbed,
Come on.
to have accidents. We're not agreeing to that in time.
Right.
But when we look at things from an eternal place and understand that when we grow and when we expand consciousness on a collective scale. So it's not about what we are experiencing. It's about expanding the whole collective view of consciousness so that humanity can go forward and begin to blossom in the power they were meant to be in. Okay. So I don't want to go too deep down the rabbit hole. I want to kind of stay.
No, that's
the
really great. That's really great because, even you speaking about the responsibility of authority that each one of us have on our own life as we, move on to our spiritual path. That's what we're expanding right now and what's happening with society. There's one part of society saying, hey, you have to do this and this and this to be well and to be healthy. But anybody who knows what their spiritual essence is knows that, oh no, I can be healthy right here inside of this being based inside of the energy of who God, the universe, made me.
Right.
But you have to have that for yourself. You can't go out and tell other people to do that because they may not have that understanding.
Very good.
So that you don't have the authority over them. You have authority over you.
So true.
And sometimes that's the difference. People want you may not be there yet, but we're actually expanding right now into that. Can you see that?
Oh yeah. It's if we just begin, and again, time is a gift. Okay, it's a gift, and if people really understood time, they would really be more open to embracing the process of their destiny and their purpose. Again, when I mean time is a gift, time is the only place that we can become, okay? And whether that's becoming better or worse. But nevertheless, we are not in the prison of our own experiences because of time. Because of time, we can overcome anything. Because of time, we can learn from experiences. Because experiences, they're the classroom of life. In astrology, Saturn represents time. In an astrology chart, okay? Now, Saturn is also a very strict teacher. It's so funny, this is coming to my memory. You remember, golly, what was the name of that movie? But it was the movie that had Scrooge in it, okay? It comes out around Christmas time, right?
Oh, the Christmas Story. No, that's not the Christmas
there we go.
Is it?
Is that it?
Yeah, okay.
I can't remember. But I know the character is Scrooge, right? And Scrooge is the perfect representation of a Capricorn, okay? All about that business, okay? All about making sure whatever you bring to the table, it is useful, can be very frugal. So he represents the fullness of Capricorn energy, okay? Now, in that movie, you understand that there are 3 levels of time that he had to experience. Okay?
Yes.
There was a ghost from the past, one from the present, and one from the future. And that is how he learned. That was actually Saturn energy because it takes all 3 of those dimensions to really come to a conclusion about how the process will play out for you as it relates to purpose. And because of time, he was able to shift his awareness and become something that he wasn't yesterday, right?
Wow, yes.
And I think that is again, whenever we're talking about time, we're talking about Saturn. Whenever we're talking about time, we're talking about learning, growth, and expansion. And there is a purpose for everything that happens in time. There's a scripture that reads, there's a time for everything under the sun.
Yes.
Okay. So that means the best of times and the worst of times are all teachers to expand us if we are willing not to just trust the process, but can we accept the process?
Yes.
Can we accept the responsibility of the process? Because if we're going to accept the responsibility of the process, as we're talking about time, then we have to let go of the person that is getting in the way of our ascension. And I'm not talking about a relationship. I'm talking about the individual, him or herself.
Yes. Yeah.
It's always a sacrifice. And that's the problem. Nobody wants to sacrifice their ego because we all want to be right.
Mm.
We all want to be correct. But the beautiful thing about time, as time goes on, time begins to reflect and mirror back to you who you are as a person. Okay? So even if you resist looking within, then because of time, we have experiences. Because of experiences, we can see what is being mirrored back to us in the moment, in the now. When that happens, we are forced with a choice. Do we let go of the person that no longer serves us, or do we allow the person that is becoming? Because that is the gift of time. So again, with me, I used to be in the business when I was in church of trying to change folk.
No.
Well, I mean, that was me.
I know, right?
And if you didn't, if you didn't convert people, if you didn't bring change, then your ministry, it didn't seem like it was effective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that was a measure. That was a measuring point. Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So, in spirituality and what we do now, is we no longer we understand that change is not our responsibility upon another individual. That is the responsibility of them to make that choice.
Yes.
Now, I can make the choice not to decline my services and waste, quote unquote, my time.
Yes.
In leading you somewhere you don't want to go.
Yes.
So the work becomes, even though I feel, more freedom in what I do, the work is yet more challenging. Mm-hmm. Because we now are giving people the freedom to be whoever they are. Now, whoever they are may not line up to who they want to become, and then that's where I come in. That's where my wife comes in. That's where you come in.
Yeah.
To give them options. I was doing a consult today for a young lady who's preparing for an astrology chart. She had 1,000 questions. I told her that I don't have the answers. I have options to the answers.
Yes.
But you have to choose which one to travel down or which door to open. So, again, time is so valuable because we can dance to all of that in time. We can't do that anywhere else. The reason that we were so desperate, I believe the soul was desperate to come here. Because in eternity, there is no becoming. There is no time. You are who you are. Mm-hmm. And if you want to talk about expansion or, in awareness or ascension, that can only be done in time.
Wow.
And people, they complain, Earth is the trash of the universe. If it's so trash, why is the population growing?
Right. And nobody wants to leave.
The population should be going down, but yet billions and billions of people are flooding the gates to get here. Why? Mm-hmm. It must be something special here. Mm-hmm. There must be something to be in awe of. Now, if we can learn to appreciate time, we can learn to appreciate life. Okay, so anyway, let me hear. What you
it was interesting because you were talking about how you and your wife and I we're available to assist people in their processing, right? And mm-hmm. I was thinking about the meeting of Miss Helen and Bobby on that park bench, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it seemed like just a chance meeting. And that's how we do with people. Mm-hmm. Oh, this doesn't mean anything. I just happen to sit on this park bench and there's somebody sitting here crying. Mm-hmm. But if we really look at life, those so-called coincidences or synchronicities that happen, they're timely.
Absolutely.
So in that piece, Bobby needed Miss Helen at mm-hmm. that time. Mm-hmm. And had she met her any other time, she probably would never have been able to hear what was being shared with her.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. You know, and I think about that dynamic, okay? And one thing about time that is so useful, it helps us to coordinate. It helps us to come together. It helps us to even coordinate possibilities. Us coming together tonight, the foundation of our gathering was time.
Yes. Because
we can coordinate when to get on the same page. We can coordinate when to get online and when to proceed with our work. Okay? And dealing with astrology, I understand that time, there's an appointment in time for every awakening. Okay? There's certain people that we get frustrated with, and that's what I didn't learn in church, that just because I wanted somebody to change don't mean it was their time to change. Yes. In time, we have seasons. Okay? We have 4 of them now. We got to understand that in human beings, it is the same way. When it is their time, their season is ready, and they can actually embrace what you're saying. If it's not their time, I don't care if they're 70 years old. You would think it would be time, but for some people, it may not be. I don't know. But at 70 years old, you know, they could just now be entering a season to awaken to oneself. And when we talk about Bobby and Helen, I can tell you right now, I've been both of them.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about time. You know, it's so funny. I have definitely been both of them.
Yep.
I have been the one who were just so caught up in life, you know, kind of like Bobby, and you know, just want to be successful, just doing what I thought would get me attention to be successful.
And my accomplishments. I want my accomplishments. Right. Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I was all about. You know, if what I was doing, and that's kind of the way I was programmed. If you're not doing something that can represent accomplishment, such as a degree, such as a certificate,
right,
or anything else, then you're not doing anything. You should be like Tom. You should be like Terry. Right. They got doctorate degrees, right, and this or whatever. Okay, you know, but just because they have the degrees does not mean that they have arrived to a place of ascension into purpose.
Yes.
Okay, they're just here to repeat the programming of our ideas of success.
Yes.
But at one time I was that. Had all the money that I could want at the time, you know. But then I became Helen, and which I lost, especially during my first divorce. I lost a great deal of my wealth. Okay,
wow. Yes.
You know, and I was just forced to be in the moment and accept where I was, and in that moment is where I believe wisdom was deposited into me, so that I can share in the people who are coming into my life 20 years later. Mm. So, you know, I've been both of them, but it's just a beautiful dynamic between the two, because Bobby was now in a place that she had a resource for wisdom.
Yes.
And Helen was in a place in time now that her wisdom was useful. Because if you have wisdom, but it's not useful to people who can take what you know and make magic with that, you can go through many dark phases, or what we like to say, dark nights of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we have to be very careful with that, especially when people are having a conversation when it's their time to ascend. And it's so interesting to me to know that ascension has an appointment time. Okay. And I can go in astrology. I can look at the ascendant, and I can pretty much tell you when your time is coming. Okay. Wow. Another technology that I like to use is human design. Okay. And in human design, not only can we see when your ascension is coming, we can tell you how to make it useful according to your own rhythm, according to the beat of your own drum, how your wisdom can be useful for yourself and enhance the life of others. But the way Bobby and Helen came together and united and became great friends, it was a beautiful story, and it really fits the theme, not just of time, but of the whole book, in the process of not just finding God, but the process of becoming God.
That's beautiful,
okay?
Timothy. Yes.
Because I believe
Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe
Mm-hmm.
Bobby and I'm just saying Bobby and Helen in the book. And to all your listeners, if you don't have the book, Patiently Waiting for Nothing, please, what are you waiting on? Get that book, and you can go into deeper what we're talking about. But the God dynamic was not just in one individual; it was in their connection with each other.
Yes.
And each of them had a role to play. Who knows? We're talking about time. Time is so complex that in another lifetime, it could have been the opposite way around. It could have been just a karmic effect of bringing one's attention to their God self in this time, in this lifetime.
Yes.
Okay? I experienced a lot of that with children in the children-parent dynamic in astrology chart. It seems that the child is coming in to bring the parent into an awareness.
Yes.
Okay? And the roles were changed. And we can look in the 12th house and come to the conclusion that, okay, so you hear me say this all the time. So, okay, so you were the parent then,
yeah.
or no, you were the brother then. But we all have our roles to play, okay, in different places and time. So I totally agree with you.
And we actually teach that aspect in the Tao of parenting, and if parents can allow, because I say all the time that I gave birth to my mother and father with my two older children, and I literally created my life out of surrendering to them, and what they needed, and I became who I needed to be because of them. And literally, my youngest son my oldest son saved my life. So it's the children. And I love how you said earlier, we created a contract. So they were over there looking, saying, wait a minute, she needs help. And could have been my mother in a past lifetime, right? Say, let me go down and help her, And so that's a beautiful thing when we can actually allow our children to remind us who we are.
There we go. Very good.
We can get so much out of that. That is powerful.
Very good. Yeah, my idea of how the ancestors, and I want to definitely recognize that spiritual entity that I consult.
Yes.
Within my space of awareness. And back in the day, I used to be a clean cut dude with a fade. Now I have these long locks in my hair. And before any of this astrology talk, time talk, any of this ascension talk, the first thing that came to me back in, I believe it's 2009, was to grow your hair. And I said, well, who the hell is this? Because, it was an audible voice, but I couldn't. It's not an audible that I could hear. It's an audible that I could feel, and it was a knowing, And people say, well, that was God. Well, it could be, but they presented themselves as the ancestors. That's and my wife knows this story because she hated that day because she started crying. She loved the dude with the clean cut fade, right? And now I'm having this conversation about I think I'm gonna have to grow my hair. I didn't know why. Didn't really ask. I just knew it was something I needed to do. So eventually, she grew to love the locks. By the way,
she did.
And now she'll cry if I threaten to cut them. So we're on different sides of the spectrum here now. But during that time, I just really got to give them honor for putting me on the path to be more in touch with my own soul, and I think that's what's happening now. But in astrology, again, and dealing with time and these sacred appointments, I also am a firm believer, the way the ancestors presented to me, is that our spiritual tribe is eternal. It's not like, okay, with me and my wife, Jaquay, that we just met. There are so many roles that we have played in so many lifetimes. And there are so many people that even the folk that could have made some of the most profound violations. And at one point in life, you could have been the same one doing the violating in that tribe.
That's right.
We don't know.
You don't know.
So, another beautiful thing with time, and we're speaking of our tribe, that we come here continuously. And, we like to think we have power by saying, you know what, I'm just shutting you out of my life. We're done. Okay?
Good luck with that.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So they don't understand how life works.
Right.
Because, you may be done this lifetime, but you're definitely not done.
Nope.
And we're here to master each other. And, we talk about even, again, the most profound violations. I think time is the only place that we can really understand what unconditional love is.
Mm.
I don't think that we really understand that in the eternal, because there is nothing that time could be useful in eternity. We can see both polarities of time from beginning to end in one setting. But we come here to understand unconditional love because think about it, if we all have soul contracts, and you would have to agree, well, you don't have to, but I think most would, that in the eternal space, that there is nothing but unconditional love. There is nothing else, okay?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Can you think of how hard it must be for a person, and I'm not excusing the actions of anybody, there's still consequences that their own soul has to learn from the steps they take as well. We all are learning simultaneously and synchronistically, all right? So think about this, the type of love that it would take to come here in that personality to perform certain actions that would be despised in time. Who would agree to that without unconditional love?
Yes.
But the theme is not the actions. The theme is how the actions impacted you to become. Okay? We are in the process of becoming. Mm-hmm. So in becoming more loving, we first had to go through the tragic events that broke us into being open to unconditional love in time.
Wow.
So time is such a gift. And one thing about gifts, it's kind of like getting a flowered or Christmas tie, around the holidays. It's a gift, but we don't really want to make it useful. We're not going to wear it anywhere out, but we accept it not to hurt any feelings. So we just kind of either give it away or put it up, or we waste the gift. Well, human beings are the same because we waste time. Mm-hmm. And we waste time not because we don't know the gift of time until something happens within the tribe, kind of like what's happening right now with COVID-19, right?
Yeah.
People are facing uncertainty, as you discussed. Mm-hmm. And they're seeing people leave here, and we still don't know exactly what's happening.
Right.
So now time has become relevant. Yes. We're waking up to understand, okay, I need to make my time useful. Okay. And, there are many people who are laid off, many jobs that are closed. This is a time now for you to use your gifts and make them useful. There are many people who won't go back to a job because they use this time to become something else.
That's
or
right.
Become something that is in alignment with their own soul and destiny.
That's right.
So anyway.
That is that is great. I was so many, it was almost like we were in a session right at some one moment because I was just like, wait, I remember this. And one of the things that I wanted to speak to in my own life, how time actually allowed me to evolve into the person that could hold this space that I'm in, because I grew up in most people would call it a traumatic life, and without a father. And I can remember crying myself to sleep so many times, just wishing I had a father, just really, and then, really wanting to be married and have my children with the father, and then being a widow at 25, and having my husband killed,
right.
And then so now I'm still dealing with father gone. And then, I had to go through a period where I just had to sit still and ask the universe, really ask God, how do I heal this fatherless child? Wow. And I remember doing a 30-day meditation and just really looking at all the disconnects I had with men and doing my own amends. You know what I'm saying? Internally, just doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
And I really saw that my life was about being able to connect to God on my own terms.
There we go.
Like if I would have had mother, father, I would have been directed in a different direction.
Very true.
But because I didn't, my whole life was based on listening to the voice, listening to God, asking God, praying and waiting for an answer. Whereas most people were listening to what the pastor said, what my mama said, what my daddy said, what my husband. There was none of that. There was only what did God want me to do. And I looked crazy to people.
Absolutely.
Because I'm living a life completely different. And at the same time, a good life as I got older, right? As I'm growing, because I'm growing inside. And people are like, how are you even doing that? And you came from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until, you know, like you're saying, my Saturn return that I realized, you know, wow, you know, this is great because I did that work. And I can reap these benefits. And that's over time.
Mm-hmm. So true.
You know, and it's just, so it was, you know, while you were saying that, I'm like, wow, yeah, look at that. That's a whole nother book, Timothy.
It is because, you know, I'm just, you know, in this conversation and, you know, just speaking to that experience is exactly what in time, you would have never agreed to go through that experience.
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
You know, and to see, one thing that also exists in time is fear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And fear doesn't exist in the eternal. So we're big, bad, bold with the declarations, you know, to experience, right?
Right.
And then we get here, and we go through the veil of forgetfulness,
Yep.
forgetting all about the contracts and
right.
everything. We look where's the money, where's the sex, where the women, where the men.
That's
wherever,
right.
You know.
Big houses, mansion, car. I want that.
Yeah. So that becomes our focus, and then it takes. And we know this, okay. In the eternal realm, we know once we get here that we're going to be more preoccupied and distracted by all the shiny things that exist here. And you know, I'm not against embracing those things and making them a part of your life if they're not the focus of your life. Okay. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, we knew we had to create certain events in time.
Yeah.
We had to set certain appointments in time to bring us to the place of remembering and putting it all together so that we can start living our life's purpose. Because like you said, and you know, even speaking from my life, you know, my parents were not the most nurturing. Okay. But if they were, then I would have to depend on them in my adulthood to nurture me to a place of sobriety whenever I feel emotionally overwhelmed.
Okay.
But because of their lack of nurturing, which I'm sure they agreed to, and I'm sure I agreed to experience that, I learned to nurture myself, and I learned to be nurtured by the universe.
Yes.
In my deepest, darkest times of isolation, I could still find the possibility of love there. Yes. And that's because of all the solitude and isolation I spent as a child, because I had nobody, you know, that I could call and be like, I'm having a real effed up day.
Right.
Can you speak life into me? I didn't have anybody like that. The closest thing I did have was my grandfather. He passed right when I was a teenager.
Yes.
Okay. So I didn't get the fullness of that, but you know, I did get prepared. Now, in time, you know, I'm trying to make time relevant and real for everyone that's listening. Mm-hmm. But the reality of it is time is still an illusion. Okay?
Yes.
And time feels real, but time is not necessarily as real as we perceive. Again, astrology proves that all the time. So whenever we're speaking of that, you think of something that happened in the past. And we think that if we just don't pay attention to that and move on, then that past is dead or it's no longer with us. as we embrace this work that you and I do, we understand clearly that the past lives on through wounds that we refuse to heal.
Yes.
And the present moment is what anchors it all together.
Yes.
Because in the present moment, it allows us to look at our experiences we're having and what is being mirrored back to us. And as much as you think you have moved on from not having a father in your life, there's still a young lady who's out there constantly thinking she's over that, but she's constantly putting men in her life that is continuously abandoning her.
That's right. That's right.
So the past is not really dead. The past lives on, and just because we don't want to look at what happened doesn't mean that it's not still happening.
That's right.
Okay. So again, that's an illusion within itself. And even the future is an illusion as well, because the future, a lot of times we embrace the future by our own reasoning. By this time, I'll be successful. I have a 5-year plan. I have a 10-year plan.
Right.
Okay. And I'm looking at this astrology chart. Saying, okay.
Well, good luck with that. Exactly.
That sounds good. But let me tell you, I'm seeing this Mars-Uranus conjunction here, honey. You just let those plans go.
Yes.
Because the theme of your life is, can you surrender?
Mm.
And if we can surrender, then God, the process, can empower us. But again, the future is still an illusion, because when does the future ever get here? Okay, we're anxious about tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes, but tomorrow that we were afraid of is no longer there. Where did it go?
Yes.
So all of these are illusions that, make us feel comfortable in a place that is very uncomfortable, because there's so much uncertainty going on. Now, I'm going to go on the wild side here and say this: just like there are experiences that we are confronted to get over from the past, and then there are anxieties that we need to heal about the future, I believe that there's a part of us in all three of those dimensions of time. Okay? Mm-hmm. There's a past self that is us that still needs to be healed. Yes. If I am doing an astrology chart and people, it's so confusing at times, because when we do a consult, and I do the consult to make sure that we are on the same page, okay? When I'm doing astrology, I'm not here to give you lucky numbers. I'm not here to tell you where your husbands and wives are. That is so far from me, you wouldn't even have fun if I was even trying to do that. I could care less about those things, right? But you claim that you want to see what you were blind to. And then when I go through this astrology chart, they do everything in their world trying to hide what's going on. Right. Okay. I had one client who wanted to appear like she had it all together. Mm. Had plenty of money, had plenty of resources. Bobby. But figured, and people, they looked up to her because of these things. Yeah. But I'm looking at a possible Uranus-Mars conjunction as well, maybe in the fifth house. The fifth house, it deals with not only romance, but it also deals with childhood. And when Mars is dealing with Uranus in that way, Uranus teaches us sudden, unexpected lessons. So usually if it's in the fifth house, it lets me know that there's some type of childhood conflict with sexual abuse. Wow. Okay. So I bring this up, and it's 5 minutes of silence on the phone. Wow. And I'm like, okay. At that moment, I'm like, why the hell did I even let that out? Maybe that cat could have stayed in the bag. I don't know. But when I'm in my channel, I just kind of flow. Okay. I don't really think about and judge what I'm about to say. I am sensitive to what a person's been through, but I had no idea because she didn't share that with me. Right. And, here she is, around close to 50 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And had never mentioned that event to anyone. Okay. So at that moment, she began to weep because what she thought was in the past and dead was still living in her reality right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And not only that, but it was controlling her future because she was afraid to even get into a relationship.
Yeah.
She's still single.
Yes.
And because it happened from a male authority figure, she trusted no man.
Wow.
So at that moment, what I did was, and I don't know if there's any astrologers even trying to do what I did at that moment, but I began to affirm her with masculine energy as a man, to allow her to feel comfortable. And I think that's what sets me apart from, I guess, other astrologers, because I just take it to the next level as a spiritual mentor. Yes. Being a spiritual mentor is what I do.
Yes.
Everything else they're just tools.
That's right.
To an end.
That's right.
So she was still living in the past, even though, 40 years later, she's here in present time, but she's not really here.
No. Because
there's a part of her we had to go retrieve and release that was still living in the past.
That's so beautiful.
And then in astrology, dealing with the future, a lot of times, and again, a lot of things I'm saying, may be uncomfortable for people, but I'm just talking about my experiences. In astrology, I have done sessions because in the present moment, their life is just full of turmoil and upheaval. But I can see as time goes on, again, because with astrology, I can go years ahead of the game, and I can see exactly when their moment of ascension probably is. So a lot of times when we're thinking we're getting into intuitive insights, it is actually our future self feeding us back information.
Preparing us. That's right.
Right, right. Because we just think that we're here. But you don't understand that you're living in several dimensions of time. I'm not even going to go into quantum physics and talk about parallel universes.
That's right. Come on.
But there's so many dimensions of time that to think that you got it all right now is just arrogant and irresponsible. But yeah, there's times I tell people, I want you to affirm and allow the future self to feed you back information. And just be open to that. And then it usually comes through the form of a dream.
Yes.
Okay? And dreams are so special because dreams, they don't subscribe to time either.
That's
okay?
Right.
You can have a dream for 5 minutes. It seems like you've been in that for 5 years. You're
okay.
Like, what just happened?
Right.
Okay? It's because dreams, they're not in the constraints of time. Okay? So, and that's another thing that I do. I don't even know if I even shared this with you. I do dream analysis with astrology. People have profound dreams. And I say 2 things. Write the dream out. They hate that part.
Right.
Don't leave me a text, audio message.
Right.
Write the dream down.
Yes.
And date it and put a time on it. And if you do that, I can go in astrology, try and tell you exactly what's happening. There has not been one dream analysis that I could not relate it to a hieroglyph on an astrology wheel.
Yeah.
Not one.
Yeah.
So again, we exist in so many dimensions, and we can, if you're having difficulty becoming the person that you know in your soul that you're supposed to be, we can use technologies like astrology to gather information about what we need to heal from the past that's still alive, and information we can get sent from the future, our future self that has already arrived. We can send that information back into what we call time to help us in the present moment. And I'll let it go with that.
That is, oh my God, just gave me chills. The work that you provide in the actual structure of time inside of astrology that you provide is so healing to people. And here we have been taught since childhood to going to church saying that's of the devil. Can you see that tool was taken from us? That is just
Yeah. It is interesting, right?
Yeah, and people tell you, oh no, you can't listen to that, or you can't, and
right.
Here it is, a tool that can help us to really understand or overstand what it is that's in our way.
Yes,
or
absolutely.
what's opening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that you can create a blueprint. Okay, take these steps, and it'll be cool.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because you have other wisdom, besides the astrology. Now I can coach you. Now I can give you some spiritual acumen. There are things there that you have
Mm-hmm.
available. So that is, thank you so much, Timothy. So, we're winding down. I want people to know where to find you, where they can connect with you, how that they can engage, what they need to do to get a chart done.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you give us that message before we
And
sign
business,
off?
let me tell you, business has picked up lately because
Yeah.
people
Oh,
they now
yes.
have time
That's
to talk
right.
to me.
That's right. They have
uh,
time.
so yeah, one of the main ways they can reach me, okay, is through theawakenedmagi.com. That is my personal website. And from that website, there are different uh, portals of information that you can engage in, anywhere from setting up an appointment with me to listening to our podcast there, and to see what new things we have to offer. The next two things, number one is the Facebook, the Awakened Magi page, and it is spelled just as it sounds, the Awakened Magi. And then also, an extension of that Facebook group, we have a private group. Okay, and I think you're part of that private group, right?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And
Yes.
so you already know that's where it
Your
goes
wife
down,
makes
right?
sure she keeps me. He keeps me grounded.
you already know.
Yes.
So the private group, ladies and gentlemen, is simply um, on my public page, The Awakened Magi. I usually go through a transit, share my reflections, and kind of move it on. I may be on there for 15 to 30 minutes, and I'm moving on. But on the private group, you can address me directly. You can post whatever issues you are going through. And if there's a transit or something I see as relevant, I'll post it there, or I'll share it with you and personally in your inbox. And we do several lectures there. I'm always on there sharing reflections of planetary movements. Or if times are just hard, and if anybody's listening that is in the group, if times are just hard, I'll just call you. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, yo, you're going to make it. You're going to get through this. Okay. So it's really a powerful support group there in that private group, and we love to promote it. There is a subscription fee of $9.99 a month, which is not bad at all for the information that is provided. Yeah. So any of those ways you can reach me on how to make an appointment, and I would be more than happy to work with you.
Wow. This has been absolutely fulfilling. Thank you so much, Timothy, for taking time out. And I just always look forward to our conversations.
Yeah. Like I said, especially with this movie, I'm grateful that you gave me this topic because I'm pretty familiar with it now, and I see time in such a different way than I did, when I was Bobby.
Yes.
When Bobby had an idea of time, Helen had an idea of time.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
and it took both of them coming together to see how to make that time useful, and that's exactly what you did for me today. I can't think of anything better to be doing now than to spending this time with you discussing this, and I hope that everybody gets a new reflection or a new contemplation of what time is. Like I said, my mentor kind of revealed this to me and said, time is just like this DVD. He was holding a DVD. Do they even have DVD still?
Not that I know of, right?
but it's a little disc right here, right? Yeah. And within this disc, it just seems like, okay, it's just a plain old disc. And you notice that disc kind of mirrors the way our universe looks in a disc-like shape, right? And within that disc, if you play it, there are several events in that disc that create a story from beginning to end, and even a theme to all of it. But you can't see it until you actually engage and play the disc.
Yes.
In eternity, we could just look at how shiny the disc is. But
yes.
when we choose to go into the time, spend time to embrace it and play that disc, then we can put all these experiences together. And, I just want to encourage anybody out there, no matter how painful your experiences are, no matter how disappointing your experiences are, it doesn't mean, just because it was painful doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful.
Yes.
There is meaning behind all of your experiences if we can learn to accept. And once you accept it, it just another thing that you can only do in time, and that's forgive.
Mm.
You can't do that in eternity. So time is another gift that we have to let go and forgive. Because one thing about time that has proven true, you slowly become the person that you refuse to forgive and let go of.
Oh, yes.
And so if we despise, some of us, the very gift is in our power. But it's more, it seems like it's more meaningful for them to hold on to the pain than for them to let go and to become something else.
Mm.
So in time, look, one thing about the universe is very patient. If you choose to want to waste your life away and not do anything, we could have a whole new discussion about free will. I don't believe in free will. And I'll tell you why, because if we believe everything is predestined and we agree to certain experiences, then the conditions of those experiences will automatically play out, even if you think it was your choice.
That's right.
To do or not to do. It was always your destiny to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you will never necessarily have free will because you have already agreed to every experience that you're about to have.
Yeah.
Now your free will plays in, do you choose to forgive and let go? You do have the power to do that.
Yeah.
And the universe is so patient. You don't want to do it this lifetime. It'll give you 1,000,000 more to get it right.
Yeah. That's good, because what that's speaking to is the right use of will.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you can surrender and allow
Mm-hmm.
it to unfold, or you can just
Mm-hmm.
hold fast and it's going to unfold anyway, but it may even be more painful.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where our power is. But
Yeah.
we give that power away. The very thing that makes us powerful, we're so quick to give away by holding on to painful events just to feel alive.
And to be right.
And
to be right about it, to be angry, and I'm right in my anger.
It does make you feel angry, especially if you marry somebody that reflects those conditions that you thought were dead. It makes you all alive again.
Yeah.
So one thing about time, it will test all of our relationships, because the person we were when we met, we will be different people 10, 20 years later. And a lot of people that are married, they don't understand how time works in their relationships. They don't understand that you don't just marry the person you love. You marry the person that can help you become more of you over time. And that changes, and a lot of, I disagree with a lot of therapists who try to establish relationships to go back where they were when they met.
No.
That's no longer available.
It's not available. It doesn't exist anymore, because neither person is the same person.
There we go. And that's the gift of time. Who wants to be the same as we were 30 years ago, right? So, again, I just thank you. Like I said, we could go on.
I know. And you spoke about freedom and free. Next week, we actually get to speak with Leela Woodward, and we're going to be speaking about freedom. And inside of the conversation of structure, because people want to be free, but but free ain't free, right?
It is. Yeah, that's definitely true.
It's going to cost you something, and we spoke about it earlier. That whole authority and responsibility. What are you really willing to take responsibility for in order to create freedom? So. So thank you, Timothy. I hope you guys join us next week on another session of Patiently Waiting for Nothing. And Timothy, we want to wish you and your family well.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the social media. Right?
Oh, yeah. I'm always around. You already know.
All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And we will see you next week when we're talking about freedom with Leela Woodward on Patiently Waiting for Nothing, session number 6. Take care. Peace.
Source of the universe, guide